Hey guys, Ghostly Cars back here with another video this time. Talking about how um, the biggest misconception of having a G37 or a G35 with them being called Skylines. So I wanted to go ahead and explain why people do this and kind of like without any hate, just explaining why people do that and why it's such a common thing that people do. So I'm guilty of it as on a joke. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I have the Skyline, guys. I have the American Skyline." So I wanted to go ahead and explain basically why people call it that and why people, go ahead and do that. So, but first off, this is a video of me driving. I have a GoPro now, so I can start doing that kind of stuff. It's way too high, that's why I'm using this as a voiceover video. But yeah, so first off, back in when Nissan made the first Skyline in Japan, back in like the 70s, it was just a regular car. The Skyline was a regular car. So I'll put a picture up right now. It's the Skyline. It was a four-door sedan, and then they made a top trim of it, which is the GTR. And they had a couple of different generations of that. Every generation had a Skyline variant and then a GTR variant. So the thing with that is people always know about the GTR over here, but over in Japan, it's known as a very, everyday, boring sedan. Maybe looks a little sporty, but not anything to brag about. It's not like turboed. It's not, I think some of them had RB in it default, but there wasn't like a whole lot of people who knew about the regular Skylines. So fast forward towards the 2000s, and basically, so Infiniti was made to compete with Lexus, which was like Toyota's luxury brand. So Nissan, Infiniti, they're the same thing. So they were kind of having a identity crisis. So they had the full size sedan, and then they had like an SUV, but those didn't do too terribly well. So they needed something to go ahead and improve their lineup. So legitimately, what they did is they went over to Japan and were like, "Hey Nissan, hey, we need a car. We need a cool car to sell as an Infinity that's not sold over here already, that we can go ahead and make it an exclusive model." So over in Japan, they've had the Skyline ever since like the 70s or 60s. So they basically went, "Oh, well, we have a sedan and a coupe that's kind of cool, and we call it the Skyline." So that's one of the reasons that's called the Skyline, which is kind of cool. So of course everyone's like, "Oh, you have a Skyline, you have a Skyline," but that's the actual explanation of why people do it. The other thing as well is, so whenever someone calls something a Skyline, they're not calling it a GTR. At least from what I've noticed in the community that I've been in for Infinities, everyone's just referring to the Skyline sedan or Skyline coupe. The actual model that my car was, which is a G37, was the Skyline 370 GT. I think it was the GT because the GT had the sport model. I believe it's kind of iffy about how much trims. There's not much information online about certain trims of certain cars. But I do know that the Skylines that were over in Japan, they were right. They were, I think, yeah, right-hand drive. I couldn't think of it for a minute. But basically, that's one of the reasons that people will say, "Oh, it's not a Skyline. It's not a Skyline." But in all essence, it's the same parts, and if you rebadge it, it's not terrible. People also get on people for like the title. It's like, it doesn't say it on the title, and then I'm like, I mean, if you buy an Acura Integra, isn't that a Honda? Isn't that just a Civic? And people are like, "Oh, well, I mean, I guess," and I'm like, same principle. But yeah, that's kind of the explanation there. And then I did want to go ahead and mention someone else as well. So whenever they're making the R35 GTR, not the Skyline, they didn't call it a Skyline at all. So there wasn't a Skyline variant of it, at least from what people know. So when they were making it, they used a test bed, which was actually the Japanese Skyline, which was the G35. If I put a picture up here real quick, but they basically put in a 3.8 V6 twin turbo and all-wheel drive, and basically everything from the GTR in terms of powertrain and the bigger brakes and everything, bigger wheels. And they're using it to test the actual capabilities of that chassis, because they kind of share similar chassis because the R35 is sprung off of the G35 platform. So is the Ultima, but basically like it's a lot of shared parts through Nissan because they're kind of a little bit lazy. Um, but yeah, and then the other thing as well is a lot of the same parts that you can put on a R35 will fit on a VQ because again they're the same. They're the same architecture for the engine. There's a way that you can actually convert the R35 intake manifold to a G37 or G35. I've actually seen a guy. His name's George Nava. He's on YouTube and he's on Instagram. I follow him. He's pretty cool. But he has a full GTR intake manifold, which is pretty awesome. It doesn't do a lot for power, but yeah. And then the other thing as well, on the side note that's here as well, is so the all-wheel drive system that they use in the Infinitis, primarily the cars, not the SUVs, is called the Tesla. I believe the Tesla all-wheel drive system. And they've been using that in every single GTR and Skyline that they've made. So it's kind of like the same system. Of course, different generations as well. But yeah, I just wanted to make this video just to clear up some confusion with people and try to bring like kind of evidence and show you guys why people call the cars that we have Skylines. I don't do it. I do it for sarcasm, but I did want to explain why. I tried to do this on Instagram and people just were like, "Oh, well, you're just calling a Skyline," and I'm like, if you guys watch the video, you'll understand that I'm not actually calling it a Skyline. I'm telling people why people do it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this driving video. I'm gonna try to do more content with driving. But yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. And this is gonna be some of the not regular content, but some of the different content I'm gonna do. So, but yeah, hope you guys have a great day and stay spooky. Make sure to watch out. We're gonna be doing a Y-pipe on the truck here soon, and as well, I'm gonna have Android Auto on my car here soon. So I'll see you guys in the next one.